No, that's like an emoji. So at any point during the time, if you click on that heart, you can send me a thumbs up, you can send me a thumbs down,
Okay.
you can whatever.
Whatever.
But we are live on another week of Showtime with Jordan von Haslow on Hot 702.5 FM, Las Vegas. And I have not with me, but with me in technology, I have my good friend Cheryl L. Davis, fabulous playwright, television writer, lawyer. I think when I first met, when Sojourner first introduced us when we were working on Our World.
Yes,
It was almost 10 years ago. So I got like some kind of
say
like
that, you lie.
It's seriously, I think it's like 8 or 9. I got like some kind of a random, you know how like Facebook will say like, oh, today, and it was like, yeah, I was like, oh my goodness. But I remember when Sojourner first introduced me to you, and like she sent me your bio, and it's like, okay, yeah, she wrote for the, for As the World Turns, and she got the Cleveland Award, and she has this play being produced, and this play, this. She's also a partner in the law firm of blah blah blah. I was like, oh my goodness, like, I was like, I officially feel like an underachiever. But you've been working on so many things. What I definitely want to talk about, because you this season you joined the writers' room of Law and Order SVU.
Yes. Dun dun.
Dun dun. That's so awesome. Can I tell you, I love that show more than anything in the world. Like, it's like the, I think, ultimate. What'd you say?
It loves you too.
Oh, yay. It's like the ultimate comfort food, right? It doesn't matter how many times you've seen an episode, you can just watch it. You still get shocked when like certain reveals happen. And it's like, even recently, especially like once the studio shut down and like haven't been leaving the house, as it's working through the day, like I'll just keep Law and Order, because Law and Order
on some channel or another.
Exactly. And it's like perfect, and like the mood is perfect, and you can kind of tune in. You can. I love that show so much. So congratulations! I'm so happy.
Thank you so much. It made me incredibly happy to join a great group of people. They're all wonderful, very talented folks there.
So talk to me about that, because you've worked on other TV shows. Well, actually, let's go back before because I really want to dig into this line here. But let's go back, because you're also, I mean, you began really as a playwright. And you have a lot of plays. I feel like every time you pop up in my Facebook feed, it's like, oh, I'm flying to so-and-so for a reading of my Lala. Oh, and here we're doing. So do you have anything? Well, I guess nothing's in production now, but what were you most recently working on, or what was most recently produced?
Well, most recently, I'm the co-librettist for the Volcano Theatre Company in Toronto, is working on an adaptation of Scott Joplin's Treemonisha, an opera that was written in, I think, about 1911. And they have working with a Canadian playwright, and they brought me in as a co-librettist to work on some of the songs. And that's what I was traveling up to Toronto and meeting with my collaborator and the director, Wayne Mengesha, of the Soul Pepper Theatre in Toronto. And let me say, Leah Simone Gold is a wonderful Canadian playwright, and that's who I've been working with on this Treemonisha project. But we were supposed to have our world premiere in Stanford, California, because they were helped co-produce the piece. And they were going to produce it in Stanford in late April this year. And then San Francisco kind of started shutting down, and they got the Volcano started hearing that, well, it was maybe not as likely that they'd be able to produce the play in California in late April. And as we know, what's happening with the rest of the world now happened. So right now, the show is kind of on pause right now. But I was supposed to be last week, I think it was, the last week or the week before, I was supposed to be in Toronto at rehearsals. So hopefully sometime within the next few months, there will be figuring out rescheduling when they can do it in California. They had scheduled to do it in Washington. So it's going to be a lot of rejiggering of schedules to see when Treemonisha does receive its world premiere. But that's the most recent thing I've been working on, and I've been having a great time doing that.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate for everything that's happening is unfortunate, of course, for a lot of reasons. But I find it's very unfortunate how there's so many projects that were either like, about to open or like were
Just
scheduled to open.
open. Yeah.
Yeah, and then it's just like, and it takes the wind out of the sails, and especially because I mean, I guess it is fortunate that you guys haven't opened, because I think about shows that like
Oh
had
God,
opened
yes.
like a couple of weeks beforehand, and then it's like the wind is out of the sails. It's had its premiere, and it's
How do you
set
bring
like
it back?
exactly. So it's like really, really unfortunate. Yowzer. But I hope that turns out. I really love Treemonisha. I think that music is really.
It's gorgeous music. And what we've done also is because by adapting the piece, we've also like fleshed out some additional storylines and additional characters. So we've actually brought in some other Joplin music from other like standalone songs or other pieces, and we've used it to kind of flesh out the score of Treemonisha. So I think it's going to be very good, and it's going to be really fascinating to hear this wonderful music. My God, Scott Joplin. Out of town, playing in a theater near you.
Right. Are you working on any? So that's kind of like put on hold. Are you working on anything of yours right now?
I am actually, as I was saying before we started, I've been doing this thing that the Dramatists Guild has called #end of play. And the idea is that at the beginning of the process, like March 1st, you say, I'm going to work on this play. I want to finish this act of something. I want to do the X rewrite. You kind of state at the beginning of the month, this is what I want to accomplish over the month of March. And you check in pretty much on a daily basis and say, like, if you've written today, how much you've written today, and if you have a thought that you want to share with your other people out there in the ether doing #end of play. So I did start doing that to start working on a play that I've had in the back of my mind. Actually, it was one of the very first plays I started trying to write, however many years ago that was. And the topic got brought to my mind again. I said, you know what? I am actually going to sit down and I'm going to get well stuck into this particular play. And it is actually about Langston Hughes and Zora Neale Hurston and them working on the play Mulebone, and how it destroyed their relationship. In fact, supposedly there's a version of the script, the draft of the script, because it never really got completed, that Langston Hughes just wrote across it, the authors fell out. My working title is The Authors Fell Out.
How fun. So how far are you in that process?
I'm about 25 pages into that. Okay. And I've got a lot of like stacks of research around me too, reading about Zora's life and work and Langston's life and work. I've been reading about Alain Locke, who was close to both of them, and there's like a ginormous new book about Alain Locke that's going through that too.
Yeah, what is your? I like I say, you always just like I'm never not amazed by you, because you're always so like prolific in terms of just your output. You're always working on a personal project. You're always working on a project for hire. Now, and you're also working as an employee for a TV show, and you have like a full-time like corporate job. So like, what is a day in the life of you? And doesn't ever end.
Well, I don't sleep much, so it kind of does.
So what is your process? Like, what is your, like, do you write like throughout the, like, I remember reading Louis Auchincloss was very much the same way. Like he would write, like he published like a book every year, but he also worked as a lawyer. And I remember reading his memoirs, and he would just kind of keep notepads around. So just even through the day as he's doing something, if you're like, oh, gotta write that down. And then he'd come home and like, that would be his moment. Like, what's your process?
I'm a lot like that too, because I find that, and I found this over the years, that when my mind is firing on like day job or day career stuff, like if I'm working on a brief or I'm working on a piece, like right now I'm the general counsel of the Authors Guild, which is a tremendous institution and a great job to have. But if I'm working on something, so that part of my brain is functioning and firing, I'll find that sometimes the other part of my brain, I don't actually know which left and right brain are supposed to be creative and practical, but for purposes of this demonstration, let's say that this part of my brain is firing for the law, and then there'll be sparks on this side that will go like, oh, wait, here's an idea that I need to write down for this other project I'm working on. Here's an image. Here's a lyric idea. Here's like a line of dialogue. Here's like, oh my God, there's a theme that I need to explore. Right. And while during the day, I'll be typing da 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 da, okay, and like in the party of the first part, etc. And I say, oh wait, and then I'll go and write down something else, and then I'll go back to what I'm doing. So I do find that and even when I'm working on a writing project, and I can be really intensely focused on that, and then I will get a spark of an idea for something else.
Yeah. Is writing something that has always been, or is that something you kind of came to at a certain point in your life or career?
It's an always been. I remember when I was in second grade and I tried to write a play for my class, and I tried to write a role for every single person in my class so no one would be left out. And that is really freaking hard, I will have you know, for a second grader.
Especially for like a 20-minute play, right? Like a 10-minute play.
With like 30 characters, all I'm having speaking roles.
So did you finish it?
No. I was in second grade, dude. I did not finish.
So at what point did law come about, right? Because I know, usually, like, I went to an arts high school, and then I went to school as a music major after that. And like, was the idea of perhaps studying, whether it's creative writing or something, say, less practical than getting a law degree, was that ever like a decision that you made, or was it like a decision that your parents made, or was it or was it that you had these kind of dual interests and you were able to find a way to have them kind of coincide and work together, propel each other?
To some extent, I had a lot of dual interest, because ever since like second grade, I started trying to write like short stories and novels. Yeah, short stories. But then I realized that like the trees' leaves blew in the wind, like that kind of narrative is like, nah, I just got to let's skip to the part where the people are talking. And then I realized, like, well, if all I'm gonna write is people talking, then I should be like writing plays. So then I kept starting different plays, like through high school, etc. And I would always have like the fire of inspiration. Say, oh my God, this idea is great. I love this idea. And then I would start writing like passionately about it. And then I'd get to what I call the annoying middle sloggy part. And say like, oh, well, this is not as fun as it was at the start. But oh, wait, I've got another idea. And it's even better than the one I'm currently working on now. So I would just keep like working on starting so many projects. And actually wasn't till I graduated law school that I started finishing a project. I said, I am not starting another piece until I finish the one I'm working on now. So that was a big development in my writing career. But in terms of being a lawyer, I was in college. I went to college an aspiring actress. So many of us in theater are. And I went to Princeton, which actually does not allow you to major in theater, which enabled me to avoid that we are not paying this money for you to major in theater, young lady argument.
Because it wasn't even an option.
No. But so I majored in, what they do is they allow you to major in English and get a certificate in theater and dance. So that's what I did. Okay. But I studied theater, and I started trying to write more short pieces. I wrote a song lyric for our musical theater group Triangle when I was there. And I was thinking of writing a play as my senior thesis. And I had all these different topics in my mind. And I went to my advisor, and he said, why are you writing about these other topics? Write about something you know. Write about being a Black woman at Princeton. And I was like, I don't want to write about being a Black woman. I'm busy living being a Black woman at Princeton. So I wrote like your standard, like historically based thesis. What was it? The theme of transgression in English Renaissance and Spanish Golden Age drama. Oh. So I wrote that. And then I get to the end, towards the end of college, like, okay, what the heck am I going to do with my life now? And I actually wasn't really decided then. I knew I didn't want to do the sciences. I knew I'm a wordy person by nature. So I thought, well, law school, and I thought actually, ooh, journalism school might actually be kind of good. So I was looking for a joint law and journalism program. So I applied to Northwestern, which has really great law and journalism schools. I applied to Georgetown. But my best shot, I figured, was Columbia, that actually had a set up program for you. The
Right.
other ones, you just kind of have to, like, I'm going to law school, I'm going to journalism school, and let's try to make them work together. But
Right.
Columbia had
is a specific, yeah.
exactly. So I applied and I did that. So I've got degrees from this Columbia School of Law and School of Journalism. So yeah, and that's when I started actually. When I got out of law school, they said I started finishing projects. They said I can't just keep starting on and stuff endlessly. I need to have. I think law school gave me the discipline to sit and work on a project, a play, through to its completion.
Totally. So what was that first play that you completed?
It was about Anne Boleyn and Henry VIII. That is called Ruling Passions.
So you was already kind of like preparing yourself for a career in the soaps, right? It sounds like.
Yes.
So talk to me. So you came out of law school,
Yeah.
and you start immediately working for a firm.
Yeah.
Right out of school.
Yeah.
All right, because you.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
No, I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
I worked at a firm called Weil, Gotshal and Manges, which was a ginormous firm then. It's an even ginormouser firm these days.
And then at the same time, you were just writing. And at what point did you kind of start saying, all right, I want to get my work produced, or I want to get into TV? Like, at what point did you say, okay, let's start, turning the writing portion of my passion into a career?
Well, it was when I was at Weil. Yes, that I'm not even. Oh, I think it was when there was nearby me, and it's no longer with us, unfortunately. There was a store called Applause Theater and Cinema Books. It's on West 71st Street, and I used to go and hang out there as just a theater junkie. And there was a young man who worked there, Michael Mejias, and I believe he was the one who said, "Hey, I work with a small off-Broadway theater company. You want to come work with us?" So I said, "Of course, sure." And that's really what started it. It was called the Applause Theater Company, which, again, another institution that's no longer with us. But that's what really got me into the theatrical, off Broadway world, in which you can write something and rehearse it, and people will actually perform it. To say that it gets performed on a shoestring budget is to inflate the shoestring, because it's really you've got blocks and you've got two chairs, and it's kind of like you wear the clothes, the people come in wearing the clothes that they wore, and now go. So my mindset is my theatrical mindset is still very much off Broadway in terms of budget and in terms of set elements. And I just need people stand up, sit down, table over here, and turn the light up, and now we're in France.
The producers love you. That's why you're always getting your work produced. You're like, you can do this for nothing.
Yes, exactly. This is my theatrical goal, is I keep trying to do that. But then it's so freaky when you're in the world of prime time. And they do things like ask you, okay, so there are people, they're having dinner. What are they eating at dinner? Like, food? Whatever you guys want to do. But there's staffs of people whose job it is to make your vision appear. And there's things like, well, do you think the guest star should have facial hair? It's like, what's he got now? What's he feel like wearing? Do you like these costumes? They all look lovely. But it's really a different mindset, realizing that they're looking to you to really to help them fulfill your vision. And they ask these questions, and you start thinking about, geez, I really should think about, in an ideal world, what does the apartment look like? What are the tchotchkes on the walls? What are they eating? All these kinds of things that you have to think about when in the TV world.
And then cut to you next turning in a 200-page script, because it's all these details. But that has to be gratifying, though, right? Because when you think you know, film is very much the director's medium, right? It's about the director's vision. You know, theater is really about the actors, because once they're out there, it's
Nothing you can do.
but TV really is the writer's medium, where everyone's looking to the script, and whatever the script says is like goes.
It really is, and the really writers are always on set, at least at SVU, because we've got a wonderful showrunners, Warren Light and Julie Martin, and Warren comes to the world of theater, and we're not only welcome, we're expected to be on set when our episode is being shot. And theater is pretty much the word goes in theater. The writer still does have control over the theater, but as you're saying is right, that it's once the actors are out there on stage, there's nothing the playwright can do. They can just do what they want when they're on stage. It's kind of like, see, please say what I wrote and a modicum of how I wrote it.
Have you ever had that experience where, like, you know, say like the actors have taken your work and kind of like totally butcher it, or totally like go left with it?
Yes, and it was like a 10-minute piece that I wrote, and I gave it to them to work on, and they said, "Oh, we're working on it. Really excited, looking forward to you seeing it." I was like, "Great, so do I." And I come, and there's like all of this business and all of these things happening, and I was like, I don't remember writing this. And you're sitting there, and it's like, what? Why? Okay. But it's just nothing you can do once you're sitting there in the audience and you're seeing what's going on.
Oh my goodness. So having done now a couple of television shows, having, you know, written a lot of theater, do you find you have, aside from everything that we just said about the control and how do you have like a preference? Like if for whatever reason you had to stick in one lane and there was no way to go into another, do you have like oh my God, I love this television thing so much? Or
Oh, that's a mean question. Because I do love both, but I do think there are some stories that are better told or differently told on stage as opposed to TV or film. And that's the way when I'm writing something, I kind of try to think, what is the best medium for this particular story?
Right.
And there's some things that sometimes I get a little, what, I don't know if I can use this term, but I like to play games with time and games with narration and stuff like that. And I feel like that's easier to do on stage because I said you can go like, and lights up and you're in a different locale talking to a different person at a different time. You can go like that. And I think that audience will follow you.
Pieces, since all you have is a table on stage. There's no set.
But I've done a couple of theatrical pieces that engage in what I like to call time fuckery, where you think you're going in this direction in time, and then suddenly, okay, you're back, and then you're forward. But it's still it's hard to do. But I think, and I know I have done it successfully a couple of times. But like in a play I wrote called Maid's Door, which is an older African American woman and a former maid who starts to suffer from dementia. And when her daughter, well, it's kind of triggered, the incidents are triggered when her lawyer daughter moves into an apartment much like the one which she used to work. And the play is full of switching back in moments in time when she was like working for her employer in an apartment like this, and then flipped, and then she's got this, like, her black lawyer daughter is in the same apartment doing stuff with her family. Mm-hmm. And the way that works is it's also the going back and forth kind of mirrors what's going on in the lead's mind. And when the barrier between the present and the past becomes extremely porous. So that, I think, I mean, I'm trying to adapt it into film. I probably can, but right now I've got to think of ways in which to do that, because also one thing in the plays, you have like the same actress plays like the younger version of the daughter and plays the granddaughter. And right. I kind of like that, because then when she's talking to her granddaughter, she calls her granddaughter by her daughter's name. And as an audience member, you can understand she's back in the past now. And she sees this girl, this face, and she thinks, oh, it's her daughter, but we know, oh, it's her granddaughter. Right. So I think it's easier to do that on stage than if you can do it in film, but it's not going to be the same kind of like feeling of connection as when you actually see the same actress and she's talking to her. You kind of wonder, like, well, of course she's confused.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's so interesting.
I actually won 7 Adelco Awards for that play. Yay.
Yay. So how did you talk to me about your television career? How did television happen for you?
Well, I was working at the part of the Playwrights Lab of the Women's Project in Playwrights Theater, now just called the Women's Project. And we were working on, it was like we get together and meet on like a month, every other week or every other week, I think it was, we met. And we were all working on these 10-minute pieces. And ironically enough, this was like the beginning of The Maid's Door, when they said, please write a 10-minute piece based on an apartment in which you already live, place in which you live or have lived. And I decided to write about my apartment on the Upper West Side. When I was moving in, my grandma came to help. And I was in this one bedroom, and there was a door in the kitchen. And I said, great, there's a door in the kitchen. I can go out in the hallway and dump the garbage out, and it's really convenient. And my grandmother points at this door and said, you know what that is? It's a door, Nana. And she said, no, that's a maid's door. That's what the maids used to come in and out of the apartments. They weren't allowed to use the front door. So then I wrote a 10-minute play kind of inspired by that whole moment. And while I was in the lab with another writer named Leslie Nipkow, and she was already writing for soaps. And she said, oh, you want to write for soaps? You should meet my agent. And her agent came to the 10-minute plays and said, oh, she can actually write. Okay, yes. Leslie. So I met that agent, and that's how I got into, back when Procter & Gamble was doing soaps, I did I was like a 3-day workshop, I think it was, with Susan Dansby, who's a wonderful soap writer. And I wrote this 3-day workshop for As the World Turns. And at the end of it, you got to write like 2 spec scripts for the show. And I wrote my 2 spec scripts, and they said, would you like to write some more? And I said, yeah. So I kept writing for a while, and then we had the writer's strike. Da, 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 da. And I felt like really guilty, like I jinxed the entire industry by starting
like you. Well, how did you talk to me about that? Because that's, again, very much the writer's medium, and it has to be because they work on such a short, like a quick turnaround and with a short budget. What did you having had the experience of writing for off-Broadway, now coming into TV, what did you find you learned and that you maybe still take with you from your time working with As the World Turns?
Well, it's a more visual medium in terms of, like, there's a lot of time spent on the actors' faces, and there's more opportunity. If you focus on an actor's face, you can kind of draw more attention to the emotion than perhaps in a whole stage. There's more difficulty in drawing your attention this closely, and you can rely more upon the actor's expressions and the actor's thought process. And the same, and if you watch SVU, a lot of the closing moments of scenes, a lot of TV generally, a lot of the end beats of scenes are you watching the emotional impact of the scene on the actor. So then I kind of trusted actors more and started to say, well, you know what, I'm probably overwriting a lot of this stuff. Like a lot of these lines I'm saying about how you have somebody saying how they feel. When in TV, they don't need to say it. You see that heartbreak, you see that determination, you see that hope, whatever, on their larger than life face. Right. And you say, oh, well, there's dialogue gone. We have the emotion right there.
Yeah. So fast forward to SVU. How did this come about?
Well, it came about because my agent had gotten me in the SVU writer's room some years ago, back before Warren came back to the show. And I watched it. I was a passionate fan of the show, generally speaking. And so I was in the writer's room at one point, and then Warren left the show. And I stayed in touch with Warren. So I kept saying, hey, Warren, I'm working on this. Hey, Warren, how you doing? How's the wife and kids? So when he came back, and I sent him some of my work, and when he came back, he was a lovely person and said, you know what, I would love to hire you and give you a shot to write for the show. I was like, I would love to do that.
So did you start at the very beginning of the season, or did you come in midway through the season?
Well, actually, I am working on a freelance basis. I've only done one episode this current season. But so I came because he had a largely new crew that started about last May, I think was the month everybody started. And it's just like a general big meeting of like everybody. We all sat around a ginormous table and met each other and introduced ourselves. And a number of us were new to primetime, and some of us were new to TV altogether. But so we talked around the table, and people would pitch different ideas. And during I think it was the month of May, perhaps month of June, he had lots of people come in and talk about forensic procedures, how to investigate, how to question witnesses and victims, a lot of criminal law, which while I studied in law school, I have never practiced it. And that was a necessary thing for me to learn too, is certain elements of the criminal law, because that's very active in this space. So it was a lot of learning during that period of time, and I was around in the room for a lot of that time. And then it was kind of a spin-off, and they had their offices on Chelsea Piers. And I went back to my office and my home, and I wrote from there. And I would call in and email in and just come by periodically for meetings and to discuss the episode, the idea for the episode. I ended up co-writing it with another writer, Sharon Cluffley. It was a wonderful Aussie writer. And I'm sorry, Sharon, I insulted you with my Aussie, attempted an Aussie accent. So yeah, then I would go over and meet with her, and we would talk to Warren and Julie about this is the idea, general speaking, big picture idea. And then we would go back and they say, we like this, change that. What if you did this instead? So okay, go away, restructure the idea, come back. Okay, here's a new version of the idea. Okay, keep this, don't do that. What about here? And okay, go away. A lot of going away, coming back. So that's really the process. And then when they get an outline and say, okay, go right. And then it's a couple of weeks turnaround for to actually send them back a first draft. Right. And things change and things happen, and it's just the wonderful world of TV. The same the wonderful world of theaters, stuff happens.
Did you ever feel any pressure? And I could ask you the same thing about, As the World Turns, but these are, as I was saying to you, oh my God, I think that SVU is the most ultimate comfort food in the world, right? You've seen all the episodes, but you keep going back. Was there ever a sense of, and this might sound but the responsibility of these characters that everyone
oh God, yes,
legacy, and this this comfort food that everyone kind of knows the back of their hand, and yes. Intrinsically knows the history of these characters, and intrinsically knows, like a friend, oh my goodness, Olivia Benson would never say that.
Yeah. Oh my God, yes. There's that running through your head constantly. It's through my head constantly. So you're writing for Olivia and Finn and Rollins, and then we've got new characters like Kat. But yes, there is, and with the soap, and they say to you, you're writing characters who people love. They invite into their homes and soaps on a daily basis, and SVU on a weekly basis, and sometimes more than that if you're watching Ion or USA. But so yeah, there is a tremendous sense of responsibility again that you're writing people who people love, and they've got a stake in it as much as any of us do, because they watch and they give us the love. So yeah.
Yeah. Did you your first time on set, you said that they like the writers to come on the set. Did you have to pinch yourself, or did you fan out a little bit, or
I fan out, but I also I can get really shy when I'm first meeting somebody. It's kind of like when I was in London, and I met Tom Stoppard, whose work I adore. And I was in the middle of watching his Coast of Utopia. And I was there, and I was oh, Mr. Stoppard, I am a big fan, and I'm from America, and I'm from playwright. It's I said, I'm here watching Coast of Utopia. And he said, I thought the second act dragged a bit, didn't you? I was I get to be a bit of not quite sure what I'm supposed to say now. And the people on SVU are wonderful and warm and welcoming. But initially it's oh my God, I'm sitting here with Marisha Hargitay. really warm, wonderfully warm and funny person, but you have to get to know that before you just after like I'm sending her hi.
What was the biggest? Was there like? Did you have anything that was your biggest surprise? Like this being your first primetime show? Like, oh, or like, huh? I didn't expect this to be the experience. Or was there anything that you were kind of like? Not necessarily even in like a negative way, but just in terms of just either it could be the production process or the process in the writer's room or the anything.
Well, it was every part of it was really a wonderful new experience for me because it's so different from soap. And soap, they send you what they call a breakdown. It's like 10, 11 pages or so of essentially this is what happens in your episode. But when you're writing for prime time, there's a completely blank page and you start from an idea and then you got to flesh the idea out because that's in soap, you got to turn stuff around quickly. So it's like, okay, you got to go from here to here and here in the course of your day. And your primetime episode is like, what do you think the episode should be about? Like, oh, wow. And there's a lot of imagining and a lot of wonderful creative work in trying to creating this whole little mini world. Yeah. And then this coming up with like names of characters. And also I think that was one of the biggest surprises that they've got to clear every bloody thing. Like I would just come up with on stage, just come up with the name of character, boom, character name. But no, they say we named a character in a particular city, like Syracuse, and we said her name is Blumpty Blump in the Syracuse, and then they come back with a report. Oh, there actually is a woman named Blumpty Blump in Syracuse. You got to change the names. Like, really?
And you're like, of course, there's a woman named Mary in Syracuse. Like,
but seriously, they're vetting all of that stuff, and we had. Again, it's another difference between theater and TV where we just have they've got to review these checks in the episode. And on the checks, because on stage, like you have blank pieces of paper, you've got pieces of paper with whoop-de-doo written on it. Nobody cares on stage. But in TV, because somebody may freeze frame that, you got to clear the names of the entities on the checks.
Right, the address, the bank name, the routing number.
We've got to have like 50 potential names of people that you can use on the checks, and then I got to clear those. Okay, these 10 work, these 30 don't, but at least you got 10 names that work. But so just that level of detail and precision is just really fascinating. As I said, there are people whose jobs and careers it is to make this stuff come to life.
Yeah.
And that I found fascinating and incredibly cool. And they're really good. They're really great at it. Things like, what do you think this is the right paint color for the room in which this event is supposed to happen? It's like,
and you're like, this is a 30-second scene.
Yeah.
It's never gonna be shown again. It's so fast. I always think that's so. I mean, that's when I started working in the studio system. I remember thinking just that, like, wow, it is amazing.
Yes.
How many people? Because again, like you said, like the off-Broadway theater, you write something, everyone gets up, they do it, and they go have beer around the corner afterwards.
Yeah.
But it's so amazing. But it's amazing how in film and in television, how many people it takes to get something from your computer screen to like my TV, like the myriad of attorneys and painters and researchers and But I always thought I think that stuff's kind of fun too, just like in terms of just research, even just because it's truly like world building at the most detailed level.
Detailed level, and I get attacks of Virgo brain sometimes. That's actually my Twitter handle. But sometimes if I start getting into details, I can go down a rabbit hole. So it's kind of fun. It's fun for me, but it was just fascinating that I was getting asked to do this. Like, well, if you really want me to come up with stuff, I can, sure.
Have you ever, like, you write plays and you've written scripts and you've written spec scripts. Have you ever written like something that could ultimately be series, like whether that's like created a series Bible of your own or created a world?
I have actually. One of my plays is called Swimming Uptown. I thought would be a good pilot, actually a really good series. It's about an educated and affluent African American woman who has to take in her ghetto raised niece when her sister gets put in jail. And I started writing a play about that. And as the more I told people about this play that I was writing and the topic, people said, "Oh, oh, girl, I had to take in my cousin's child. I had to take in my best friend's child. I had to." People are this idea resonates with people. The idea that you take in somebody else's child. And I thought, well, you know what? This actually is something that resonates. And it's also once you have that situation of these two characters forced to live together, then it kind of is a great premise for what can happen, what happens next in their lives, because she's got to go to school. The aunt has to have her career. What if the aunt has to travel? What if the girl gets in trouble? What if this, that, and the other thing? And it's like, that's all these possibilities. So I took Swimming Uptown and I made it into a pilot script. So I have done that, and there are a couple other ideas that I am working on as pilots too, but they're not quite completed yet.
Well, tell me what is when you start from scratch? Do you start like when you're working on a new play or a new script? You start?
Great. That's the most fun ever discarding project.
Do you just go, or do you start with kind of like writing out kind of like the general outline in like narrative form, or how do you go about battling a blank page?
In all honesty, it depends on the particular project. Because my very first play, Ruling Passions, I just started writing the dialogue because I love the history and I love the period, and I figured I pretty much knew the history. So I was just writing dialogue for characters. And then I realized that that's probably not the most efficient way to write. So generally, I will come up with what I consider to be like a very loose outline of like this event, that event, this event, that event. I don't like to really hyper outline things, except TV, you have to. But left to myself when I'm writing plays, I will have like just very loose outline, like this is what happens in this scene, because I love the discovery process. There's one of my plays, and I knew when I was writing it, I didn't exactly know what the climax would be. I just knew that these two characters would have a relationship breaking fight. And when I started, I did not know what the fight would be about. Because also how did that work? Oh, that was my play Carefully Taught. And that was a friend had access to a theater for a week at the end of June. And this is like in March or April. She said, "Hey, I have access to a theater week at the end of June. I can do a workshop of a new play. You wanna?" And I said, "Great." She said, "I said, I will by then." So I started writing really with the actors. I actually had actors that I was working whose voices I started to write through. And we started the writing process, and the rehearsal process. And those poor actors were terrified because they said, we haven't seen the end. Will there be an end? Like, yes, I'm writing. Trust me. But so as I heard them, and as I heard them working on, I heard how the relationship between the two leads, and I started to think about I started to learn more about the characters by watching the rehearsal process, and then I figured out what would break these two characters up, what would destroy their relationship, and I came up with, okay, now I know what the fight is about, and I could write it. Yeah. And yes, I am a creature of deadline. So like by the time we needed to rehearse that ending, we had an ending. Yeah, so I had just a very loose outline because I kind of knew the structure of the piece, and I was just writing that. But yeah, so I gave myself the freedom to discover, because I think a lot of it is like if I start writing something, I'll come up with an image just of just as a fluke and say, what if they're talking about blueberry muffins or whatever. And then by the end of the play, I'll be like calling back to like the blueberry muffin and how important it is, the relationship or something like that. I love that. And I love discovering things like that. Actually, in Carefully Taught, it's a Mickey Mouse flower pot.
That ends the relationship?
Yeah, it's like the Mickey Mouse flower pot. It's like, what? Like, I know what the flower, what are you talking about, girl? But then she says how the Mickey Mouse flower pot reflects their entire relationship. Right. It's like, okay.
Well, with that, do you find that you have a hard time putting something down, right? Because part of creating a great piece of work is knowing when to stop. Tools, right?
Well, I think it's like Oscar Hammerstein said that he never finished working on a piece. He just stopped. So there are some things that I do feel like, yes, I'm just stopping on this. And I feel like, yes, I think this is actually pretty good. And I think it's the best that this particular piece is going to be. But there are other things that even though I've had productions of them, I feel like there's something that still needs to be worked on in here. So I will go back and rework things. If I feel like there's something here that's still gnawing at me that still isn't right, then I will go back and finish it and rework that. But there are times when I say, you know what? I like this the way it is. But there are also things like you get to a point where if you've put it down so long ago, you pick it up again, I can rewrite this, or it may make sense just to write something new, because I'm not in that same headspace that I was when I started this play X years ago. Right. I've learned more, I've lived more, whatever. I wouldn't do it that same way. So sometimes I feel like, well, then maybe I should just write a new play rather than try to rework this.
Rework that. Have you had that experience of like picking something up, like, oh, I forgot about this, and kind of read it and said, oh my goodness, what was I thinking?
Well, that's really like The Authors Fell Out was like one of the very first things I started to write. And I'm looking at it and I say, I don't think, I wouldn't do it this way today. So I'm like doing it totally differently. But the idea and the characters and the dynamics still resonated, still called to me. So that's why when I picked it up, I was like, I should go back and actually really flesh this out and really do it right. Right. So, yeah, I have done it. But again, I'm not rewriting that version. This is completely new.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Do you how many projects do you typically work on at once? Like, do you have like 3 things open now? I kind of feel
easily, like you're
probably typing as we speak. Like
if I could be and be discreet about it. Jordan, yeah. Yes, in fact, I'm working on a collaboration with a gentleman, a composer lyricist in Colorado. He sent me some new lyrics for the opening number today, so I need to review those. And because I'm working on just the book of that particular show. So then I need to rejigger the book of the structure of the opening to comport with his new lyrics. And it's right, Wonderful World of Musicals, you write an opening how many times? That's one of my very current projects on my burner.
You do a lot of collaborative work.
Oh yeah,
yes. Which I think is really, because I think it takes a special kind of personality to do that. I mean, I just know
I play with others.
Yeah, and it takes a special. I just closed a show here in Vegas that was a double act, and my next show is gonna be a solo act. And so talk to me about that. Like, do you kind of feed off of other people, or do you like?
Yes, very much so. And each collaboration it's a different kind of dynamic because everybody is different. In fact, when I started working with David Wall on this project, it's based on a children's book, Uncle Jed's Barbershop. It was very different from working with composer Doug Cohen, whom I adore working with, and we've written a couple of musicals together, Barnstormer, about Tracy Coleman, the first Black woman flyer, and a book called Walk in the Shade that takes place half in 1965 Selma, around the time of the march. You may have heard there's a march in Selma. And half in 2008 Oakland, around the time of the anti-apartheid movement. So, but I'd gotten into a very, very warm and wonderful, particularly working relationship with Doug. And when I started working with David, it was kind of like dating, because again, it's a new relationship. It's a new person. So we talked a bit about what we think about how the show should be, and he told me a bit about the history of the piece, etc. So it's kind of like a little tentative back and forth. It's like, how do you think? I think this, and you're very polite, and you have your best foot forward, and all of that stuff. And now we're really well stuck in, and it's still very, very wonderful and very polite. But it's like, as you say something and say no, but wait, what if we do this? It just becomes much more animated and much more shorthand. And you're when you're starting off, that's a very interesting idea. But what if we try this? But in your relationship, no, that won't work. But what about this?
have you ever had a collaborative experience where, because especially when you're creating something and you start to live in that world, I mean, you become very invested in it.
Yeah.
Had an experience where you kind of, you and your collaborator, your partner, really came to kind of like this deadlock of, wait a second, this is not where this is supposed to be going. And well, no, this is like, how do you navigate that? Because at some point the partnerships become like a marriage, and it's like everyone's like digging their feet in, like, wait.
Sometimes you come to a roadblock, and sometimes you can work through it, and sometimes it comes to a parting of the ways where you say, look, we have just such different visions of this piece. Maybe we shouldn't be writing it together. Yeah, it just happens sometimes. Like people have divorces.
You're such an adult.
You take that back.
Oh my goodness, that's so much. So what can you tell us about your episode of SVU, which premieres this Thursday at 10/9 Central on NBC, right?
Yes.
What can you tell us about the episode?
Well, it's called Garland's Baptism by Fire. And it's
fascinating. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I remember like for the first 10 seasons, all of their episodes had a single word title. And then at some point they changed that. And I don't know if that's because they ran out of words in the dictionary or I digress.
Well, I will tell you what a number of people have kind of figured out. You may want to count the number of letters in all of the titles of the episodes of this season is just what I would suggest.
I bet you they have a person whose job is that too, right? To count all the. Wait a second. Letter.
You're off one.
What's your title?
Garland's Baptism by Fire.
So were there 25 letters for the 20? No. Because
you're very close, but you're off by the number.
I mean, what season is it? Because this is their big 21st. So there's 21 letters in it. I wonder if right, because this is the season that they became the longest running primetime show, right?
Yes, that is correct.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But so the show, this episode, the POV is of the character of Christian Garland, who's the new deputy chief, as he started early on this year. But so essentially it's kind of like it takes us a bit into his world and his faith, because he has a degree in divinity, the character does, and it kind of explores his faith and what happens when that is drawn into question, when a pastor at his church is accused of a heinous crime. Yes.
I'm so excited to see it. Have you seen? I mean, I know you're on stage. You were on the set and all of that. But have you seen the final product? Are they still in post-production or?
No. It's been. I've seen. I saw the dailies. I saw the rough cut, and I've seen the final cut.
Yeah. Is it everything
you
thought of it?
Weird. Just because it's also the whole when you're on set. And if you're looking at it theatrically, it's the whole body and big action is going on. But they put you in something called the video village, where what you're really supposed to focus on is just the monitor, because that's how it's going to look on screen.
Right.
So you're kind of looking at the monitor. There's big global action out there. Look at the monitor. Okay, that's the shot. But so it's just a really fascinating process to do that.
That's exciting. Well, I'm so happy for you. And I think it's such an awesome thing, and I wish you all the success with it. And I'm going to be sitting here with a cocktail and my popcorn.
Of course, yeah.
And checking it out. We're basically out of time. Where can folks find you online to learn more about what's going on in the mind of Cheryl L. Davis?
I have a website, cldplay.com. That's my website, which I try to keep up to date. I'm relatively up to date. And my Twitter handle is Virgo Brain, as is my Instagram. So that's where I am.
Awesome. And as everyone knows, you can find us everywhere at showtimewithjordan.com. Well, not .com, right? At Showtime with Jordan.
Yeah.
Facebook, Instagram.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's how that works.
Are you good with it? Are you good with this? So I know you're on Twitter a lot. Every now and then I'll see like a notification from you, but I'm like never on Twitter, and I'm just now trying to get my social game like up. Are you really good with the social media?
I am trying to be better. I am okay, but then I look at some people on our team and it's like, oh wow, she is so good at this. That's just not how I haven't trained myself that well yet. But I say like so some writers is like they're just like play this and this and this, like wow, she's like really he's really like really pitching the episode, and like, he's got the social media game on point. But so I am trying to be better. In fact, I am I've been tweeting more this week. Up to the episode, I've been posting on Facebook. I've been posting more on Instagram. We've got some really cool background pictures, including like Rick Fox is a guest star on this episode.
How cool is that?
That hashtag Rick Fox remains fine.
That makes me think, and then we gotta go. Is there like an actor or an actress who you're like, oh my goodness, I would love to put words into this person's mouth?
Yes, there are a number of people, but one of the top ones is I like to refer to her as Cousin Viola. Even though we are not actually related, I still strongly believe that I could go up to her and go, Cousin Viola. She'd have to like look at me for at least 10 seconds to see me. You know how we are. But I was like, you know me, Pookie's daughter. I would like give up a lung to be able to write for Viola Davis. I think she's brilliant. I think she's wonderful. I would dearly love to write something for her.
Well, there you go. You heard that. Now make it happen. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for
Cheryl. I hope to be able to get back to New York soon.
Yes, and we can hug in real life as opposed to virtually.
Exactly. Thank you all for listening. This has been Cheryl Davis, and we'll catch you next week on another episode of Showtime with Jordan. Bye.